Month has been great, Mental Health Awareness Month, and just talking about depression and anxiety. And tonight, I just wanted to share part of my story. This is probably going to be the most vulnerable and transparent I've been really since the first time I got the opportunity to share my testimony, like 16, almost 17 years ago. And so I want to just share part of my story with you. And then I also just want to look at a spiritual giant who also wrestled with mental health. And so the first thing I think is important is that we just recognize that mental health is a real thing. 1 out of 5 U.S. adults experience mental illness each year. 1 in 20 U.S. adults experience serious mental illness each year. 1 in 6 youth aged 6 through 17 experience a mental health disorder each year, and 50% of all lifetime mental illness begins by age 14, and 75% by age 24. And this was from the National Alliance on Mental Health. So, man, it impacts a lot of us. Day to day. I don't know the stats, but man, I know COVID did not help in the isolation and all of these different things. There's a person named Noam Spencer said that mental health is not a destination, but a process. It's about how you drive, not where you are going. And I believe that Elijah just has this incredible word for us tonight Man, I just believe he kind of shared his story, and where was God at in his mental health journey. So if you've had time to find your Bible, 1 Kings 19, we're going to start in verse 1 and see what God does tonight. Now Ahab told Jezebel everything Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, "May the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like one of them." So really in this, early on in this story, we see that Jezebel is what really started this fear and anxiety in him. Verse 3, Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush, sat under it, and prayed that he might die. He says, "I have had enough, Lord. Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." And I believe that Elijah has done what I have done and what some of you guys have done. He said, "I've had enough. Man, it is just more than I can take." And I know that resonates with me in different seasons, but especially in my mental health journey. Elijah became afraid. When he became afraid, he had that fear and that anxiety kind of creep in. He started to isolate. And he says he left it was his closest companion. He left his best friend and then went another day. So he was alone. He was in his head. He was in his thoughts. And he felt that he couldn't go on, or he couldn't take it anymore. It says that he had enough and begged God to take his life. And man, if I can be honest, man, I've been there. I felt like there was no hope, that there was no solution, that there was no freedom, that I wouldn't find peace again. 2 Timothy, I love this verse, chapter 1, verse 7. It says, "For the Spirit of God does not make us timid, but it gives us power, love, and self-discipline." So those I'm talking just for myself. Those fears, that no hope, there's no solution, that is not from God. God did not place that in us. It doesn't mean that we don't experience it or it doesn't feel real, but that is not what God has placed in us. Verse 5, "Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. All at once an angel touched him and said, 'Get up and eat.'" I do like that part. I just pray if it happens, it's Popeye's chicken with the rice. Verse 6, "He looked around, and there by his head was some bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank and then lay down again." Even in the middle of his mental health. God is right there. He knew exactly what he needed, and he knows exactly what we need so that we can make it through the night and we can see another day. And, again, I don't know about you guys, but for me, sometimes it truly is one day at a time as I walk through my mental health journey. And, sometimes, honestly, it's just an hour at a time. I just need to make it through this situation. I just need to walk through this anxiety, through this fear, whatever it is. Verse 7. The angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." So he got up and ate, drank. Strengthened by that food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. So God came back again. God touched him once. The angel came. God came back, touched him again. He did not give up on Elijah. And he will not give up on each and every one of us in this room. He knew what Elijah was wrestling with. He knew the fear. He knew the anxiety. He knew he was isolating. And God did not give up. God did not just leave him there to struggle and to figure it out on his own. God came down and touched him again. And I believe that God is going to come down tonight and touch somebody in this room who needs that second chance, who is just here wrestling with that mental health, who wants to walk out of here in victory and freedom tonight. Verse 9, there he went into a cave and spent the night, and the word of the Lord came upon him. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" We must be careful that when we're struggling with mental health, or really anything that brings us to celebrate on Monday night, that we don't go into a cave. Caves are dark, they're dangerous, they're cold, they're damp. There's really, at least nothing I found, there's nothing very exciting or positive about a cave. And so when we get there, bless you, when we get there, we expect that stuff to come out onto us. So we're in there in this dark place, and I can almost just envision Elijah, and he's beat down, he's just walking. Again, he just walked 40 days and 40 nights. That's a long time. He just went in this cave, man. There probably wasn't a fire. He didn't know what was in the cave. It could have been dangerous, but he thought, you know what? Whatever's in this cave is better than what I'm feeling right now. Man, that must have been a dark place for Elijah to be. Again, Elijah was traveling alone. Remember, he left his best friend, this is probably 42, 43 days ago now, and he was isolating. And can I tell you that even in the darkest caves, even when we feel like there is no hope, there is no freedom, there is no solution, we're not going to be free from mental health issues, whatever that is, we are never, ever better alone. We are never, ever, ever better alone. God did not intend for us to be on this journey alone. That's why when Elijah left his friend, God came and touched him. Just let him know, hey, I'm still here. Someone is still here. You may have left your friend. You may think you're doing right, but I am still here with you. Verse 10, he replied, "I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too." Sometimes in my journey through mental health, it's easy for me to focus on the negative or the glass half empty or what's not going right or the problems are just amplified and magnified. And I feel like that's what Elijah was walking through. He just said, man, I'm the only one left. Well, that wasn't a true statement. There was more than just Elijah out there. He said, now everyone is trying to kill me too. Well, not everyone was trying to kill you, Elijah, but that's this mindset that we get in when we isolate and we're alone. And Elisha had been faithful. Elisha had been entirely faithful through what God had called him to do this point. And Elisha had really done life on life's terms. But he is feeling this anxiety and he's feeling this stress. And he's really, I believe, at this breaking point in his journey through his mental health. At verse 11, it goes on. It says, "The Lord said, 'Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by.' Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountain apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper, Verse 13, when Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. God is providing a way out. He was providing a word. He was providing a promise. He was providing confirmation for Elijah. Elijah went, and even though he didn't hear the voice of God in these things, he still withstood the powerful wind, the earthquake, the fire. And when he made it through all of that, that is when he heard the voice of God. Remember, it was a small voice. Elijah had to get through some stuff in order to separate himself from that so he could hear God. And sometimes I just think that we don't allow ourselves an opportunity to even just step back from what's going on day to day, to just get away with God and listen. Because I know for me that when my mental health is really just going 100 miles an hour, it's because I'm not trying to listen to God. I'm trying to solve my own problems. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to make it through it. I'm trying to figure out how I can wrestle this down, how I can tackle this anxiety by itself, how I can take on this fear, whatever that is. But as soon as I can separate myself from that whirlwind of chaos, there's God's voice. God is not going to scream over what we're trying to put over him. It's just never going to happen. He made it through. He heard God in a small voice. So, man, we've just got to get out of that noise in order for us to hear God's voice and help us through our journey in mental health. So I'm just going to share a little bit of my story, and I just pray that, just like when we all get a chance to share our testimony, whatever, that, that God would use this to speak to somebody. So as far back as I can remember, I always thought I was just angry. I was just this angry person. I had an attitude. I was moody. I always had this reason or this, I could rationalize it. I could justify it why I was acted the way I was acting. To be honest, I was hard to live with at times because, I don't know about you guys, but for me, when I'm in a setting like this, you guys always get my best. It's when I get home that doesn't always receive my best. When I'm in the lobby at church on the weekend, everybody that walks by me gets my best. But when I'm in the car with my family, they don't always get my best. And so I was honestly hard to live with in my family because they're super spiritual and love the Lord. They would regularly point this out to me. They would just remind me of my character defects. But then came COVID, and I think a lot of things negative came out of COVID. But for me, COVID was really good because when COVID hit, here we were all working from home. All the staff at church was working from home, and we were just calling, checking on people, and so I was around all day long. My daughter was finishing school; she was at home. My wife was teaching from home, so all of us were in this house, and we were together all the time. And honestly, for me, that's what really brought the anger and my moodiness to the light, because it was bad in doses. But when it was 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you couldn't go to the movies and you couldn't get out and you couldn't do this or that, man, it was just amplified and magnified at home. And there was a day that Brandy encouraged me to go and see someone. There wasn't a lot of love behind it, if I remember correctly, but she told me that was the Lord had spoke to her in her quiet time, and that's what I was supposed to do. So I did. I went and I talked to this person, and much like when I first stepped into recovery and did my first 4-step, I just had to get real, and I had to get honest, and I had to be transparent, and I had to talk about things that weren't always easy to talk about. I filled all these little questionnaires and this little thing, and it was hard for me, but now as I look back, I'm glad I did, because it gave me an answer to what I couldn't place an answer on before. And so I honestly, I got diagnosed with bipolar in June of 2020. And for me, that really just began my mental health journey. And again, man, just to be honest, it was not easy, for me at the time. I honestly, I didn't want to admit that I had it. I wasn't feeling really strong about that, man. I was embarrassed. I felt sad, man. All these emotions were just running around, and I'm feeling like, hey, man, I'm a high level leader, man, who's accomplished a lot according to the world standards, and I'm just like, man, how can this be? Like, how could this be where I'm at right now? Man, I made it through my addiction. Man, 18 years, smoked my first joint at 12, $600 a week meth lab. Again, my wife, Loving, had me arrested in the driveway. She's always been my biggest advocate through life, and so I'm thinking I'm through this part, right? I mean, 2020, I don't know, that's 3 years ago. I've got 14 years clean, 15 years clean, whatever, 13, 14, whatever it is. Math is not my spiritual gift. I had a lot of clean time at this point. And so I'm thinking life is supposed to be good for me right now. Man, I got everything under control. I'm thriving. I'm living my best life. And then this happened. And so for me, mental health my journey with mental health has really just been a process. It wasn't immediate deliverance like my addiction. I went to this psych ward on suicide watch, and I'd never been in church and never opened a Bible, but that night I hit my knees, and the only other option I had was what somebody else had talked about, this God out there, and I just said, hey, God, man, you can have it. I just don't want to get high anymore. I'll give you every day of my life. And I walked out of there the next day radically changed. But that wasn't what happened with my mental health. And so in one side, I'm feeling this radical move of God, this power of God. But now that I'm walking through this, I'm feeling this frustration and this disappointment. And I was really wrestling to see God in it, because why would God do this? But why wouldn't God take care of this? And so, man, to be honest, today, there are days that I really, really struggle still. Being years later, there's days that I struggle to admit it. There's days that I struggle to accept it. And there's days that I feel like Elijah, like I just want to go in a cave. Man, I just want to go in there and hide and give up. Man, there's days that I deal with it from the moment I wake up until the moment that I go to bed. All day long, I wrestle with mental health. Man, there's days that I'm still hard to live with. Days that I can't have conversations, man. My wife will want to talk about something. I'm just like, hey, man, I can't today. I can't function today. I don't know, I don't know how to interact today. And so, man, there's days that my anxiety is unbearable. And there's days that my depression almost breaks me. But I keep pushing through. And I'm here tonight, and I'm going to walk through it until tomorrow, because my God is bigger than mental health. My God is bigger than mental health. And so, man, I just keep my faith, and I just believe that someday I'm going to get that same radical deliverance and that same radical transformation that I didn't. But you know what? If I don't, God's still good. God still has a plan. God still has a purpose for this. I may not understand. I may not think it's fair. It may not go the same story as my addiction went, but man, I'm still going to give every day to God. I'm still going to pursue God. I'm still going to give Him my best. He can still have everything. I'm going to surrender to Him every single morning when I get up. And so, what can we do about it? Because, man, I just don't believe that I'm the only one who's struggling with it in this room. God has blessed us with some really incredible counselors and doctors that have knowledge and medication. And it's okay to go see a doctor. It's okay to go talk to a counselor and just share these things and get them out. Listen, if they prescribe medicine, it's okay to take it as long as you take it by how they prescribed it. Man, I'm not saying, man, everybody's story is different from mine. My story was okay that I was ready to try some medication and get on it. And, again, that's a whole nother story in a journey. We need to also find someone that we can share with, someone that we can be just totally honest. We can be raw and real. We can be vulnerable with. I love Brené Brown. She says, vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage. Truth and courage aren't always comfortable, but they're never weakness. It doesn't matter what has happened, what emotions you have felt, what thoughts you have had. We need to share them. We need to bring them to the light. When they get into the light, God can deal with them. God can help with them. God can walk with you through them. But when we keep them in the dark, the enemy is going to run just wide open with us. You'll never have freedom. You're never good enough, man. You'll never get through this. It's always going to have control of you. It's always going to be bigger than you. It's always going to be better than you. I mean, the enemy is going to use this to take us down. We also, got to stand up and don't buy the labels that are put on us. You are not defined by your diagnosis. That, man, whatever someone says, man, whatever label they put on you, that is not the label that God has placed on you. It's a season. It's a journey. It's like anything else. You would not get a diagnosis of cancer and not go figure it out. You would not break a leg or an arm and not try to go get that fixed. We treat this the same way. We don't get a diagnosis and then not try to get it fixed. That is not the way of living. That's not that John 10:10 abundant life that Jesus came to give us. And so, don't buy the labels that are put on you. I love this. I'm not as faithful with it. I wish I could say I did it every day, but some days are rougher than others. Ephesians 6:10-11, finally be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God so that you may be able to withstand the schemes of the enemy. Another verse says another version, the schemes of the devil. We need to wake up and we need to armor up. We get out of bed, we put on the full armor of God so that we can stand, we can get ready, and we can be ready for battle that day. We can also go to the prayer team. As Celebrate has literally the most incredible prayer team on this planet. They're incredible. And man, that's what they're there for. They're here to serve on your behalf, to pray over you, to pray with you, to pray in agreement with you, to break chains and strongholds. And man, maybe you're here and mental health isn't your deal. I know I'm talking about mental health, but the prayer team is out there ready for you, whatever it is, whenever it is. Do that deal. Another thing, go to group. It's a great way to meet somebody to be accountable to open up, to be raw and real. There's going to be an opportunity tonight when we're done. Corey, somebody's going to help you find a group. Start serving is another great way. Be around some positive people. That's a great way to not be alone, because other people are depending on you to set up the food, to set up chairs, to greet people at the door, to hand out the little flyers, whatever that is. It's a great way to not just come in and sit by yourself, but to be around other people. Get some good rest, some good exercise. I'm still praying through that. Have a good diet. I'm also praying through that one. That I read that in a medical journal that the Lord did not place that on my heart yet. On a side note, I ate the last drumstick ice cream treat in the freezer before we came, and I got in trouble for that. So I'm not working on that exercise and good diet. And honestly, lastly, just don't give up. Don't give up. Don't, no matter what, no matter how bad the day is, no matter how, the thoughts that's going on, the anxiety, the fear, the depression, whatever it is that you're fighting, just don't give up. Maya Angelou said, and still I rise. And still I rise.